Wokeness is quickly becoming the public religion of Western societies. It's replaced Christianity as the religion that holds our societies together and which dominates the public space, determines our values, determines our worldview, our cultural norms, all those types of things. And in many ways, wokeness is sort of a strange perversion of Christianity. It looks a lot like many traditional forms of the Christian faith. There's a doctrine of original sin, which is whiteness. There are rituals of public penance, which people must engage in when they transgress, when they commit heresy or when they spread heresy or commit sin. There are priests of the religion, which are mainly sort of the academics and intellectuals. There are saints, which are the public figures of the civil rights movement, those sorts of people. And we're quickly getting toward the point where there are going to be witch burnings, because already we're seeing people's livelihoods destroyed, people being publicly shamed. It's just a matter of time before things get as outrageous as anything that ever happened in the Middle Ages. But there's one difference, though, with the woke religion, with Christianity. There's no possibility of redemption. Unlike Christianity, there's no way that you can get right with God. If you are born under the original sin of various categories of identity, there's just no hope for you. Now, this woke religion, it's not a fringe movement. And for too long, there were sensible, decent people who ignored the rise of this very aggressive belief system, because it just seems so nuts that you would have an entire civilization take on such a warped worldview. But unfortunately for our young, who were left in the care of too many radical classroom teachers and radical professors on campus, they are so accustomed to this way of thinking that they think they have the truth of God on their side, that they have righteousness on their side. And so we are going to have to watch this unfold, unfortunately. We are heading into the maw of a new reformation, and it's not going away. This thing is only going to get wilder. Wokelings believe that they are liberating members of oppressed groups by raising consciousness about the structural parts of society which oppress people from those marginalized communities. And everywhere we can see this rising up. It's not just stuck on campuses and in schools anymore. It's happening in offices. It's happening in public spaces. And so we've had now a little bit of time to see what the effects of this religion are. And I think any honest person would have to agree that no one's getting freer. You know, this religion, this belief system, which is being pushed so aggressively, it's not achieving what it set out to be. No one's looking or feeling freer as a result of this movement. And if so much energy is being pushed into trying to make that happen, how can that be? Well, if we want to understand the woke religion, we really need to do a deep dive on power. During the slave period in the United States, from the foundation of the early colonies up until the middle of the 19th century, the system which was used, and it wasn't just in the United States, it's in many parts of the world, the system which was used on the plantations to keep the slaves under control was a system where the slaves were broken up into classes. There was an elite, and then there was the ones that they could look down on. And in the case of that system, there were the house slaves, who got to live in the big house with the families. You know, they got to wear nice clothes. They didn't have to sweat out in the hot sun. And then there were the field slaves. These were the ones out in the fields doing the hot and heavy labor. Now, Malcolm X talked about this. He was a radical about 50 years ago or so. And he was the one who really outlined how this system operated, where the house slaves would be encouraged to look down on the field slaves, and the field slaves would be encouraged to envy the house slaves. And there was always hanging over the heads of the house slaves that if they really did the wrong thing, they would be sent out to work in the fields as well. This tension between two groups created within the larger group of the slaves enabled the slave owners to control the slave body, because there were far more slaves on these plantations than there were plantation owners. And if the slaves had all gotten together, they would have quickly overthrown the people who were in charge. Now, this wasn't just a system, as I mentioned, which happened in the United States. And in fact, when you look at power across the world, across time, this is pretty much how power works everywhere.
The woke religion has encouraged especially young people to see power and injustice in terms of identity categories. And anyone who looks with both eyes open can see that that is just not the true story when it comes to oppression. You know, there is real suffering, injustice, and oppression in this world. You know, the Korean wife of an alcoholic husband with 3 children trying to make ends meet as their struggling restaurant business goes under and the husband just beats her and drinks more and more. You know, the Ukrainian single mother working as a hostess in an East Asian bar to make enough money to send back to support her 7-year-old son and put him through school. The Chinese factory worker who takes a nighttime second job to afford tuition for his daughter so that she doesn't have to live in poverty like her parents did, and then acts like he's got a lot of energy in the morning to hide the fact that he's doing it from his daughter because he doesn't want her to feel guilty. These are actual examples of real suffering of people that I've encountered in my life, and none of it had anything to do with identity categories, with gender, with heteronormativity, or anything like that. The reality is, wokelings, if you are a domestic student in a first world college or university, you're not oppressed. No one you know is oppressed. You know, perhaps the people who wash the dishes in the restaurants that you like to go to with your friends, with the spicy ethnic food, they might qualify, but I'm guessing you don't hang out with those types of people much. The people who really are on the margins of this world, they're not people who are encountered by wokelings. And that's where the real hypocrisy of the woke religion lies. Wokeness redirects attention away from the true oppression and injustice which is occurring everywhere in the world around us towards symbolic identity issues and self-indulgent, narcissistic oversensitivities. Wokeness replaces justice with social justice, which is symbolic and fake. And it prevents us who might be motivated to try and do things to make the world a little bit better. It prevents us from actually addressing true injustice which is occurring around us. So let's then take a moment to ponder, well, what is the source of injustice then in the world? And when I think of all of the examples of injustice and oppression that I've really encountered, not just the small ones of everyday life, but the truly life-destroying examples of oppression that I've seen, every single one of them has involved money. Perhaps it was people not having enough money. Perhaps it was some people just having too much money. Perhaps it was the unjust acquisition of money. Or perhaps it had been the unwise borrowing of money. Money always is factored into injustice and oppression. The Bible tells us that the love of money is the root of all evil. And when I look back on all of the injustice and oppression that I've seen in my life, money always has something to do with it. Now, Marxists somewhat understand this. So when I say Marxists, wokelings, they don't know it, but they're Marxists. Marxists get this to a point where they'll understand that, billionaires are bad, or rich people having stuff is bad, and then usually they'll segue into a concern for the climate or something like that. But the Marxists, they're unable to really understand how this dynamic works to create true oppression. We humans, the common people of the planet, we've been working harder and harder for decades now than ever before. You might not realize it, but you almost certainly work a lot harder than your ancestors ever had to. And yet we're all in debt. We have a world soaking in debt. The people of the world are working harder and harder and harder, and they're getting poorer and poorer and poorer. Now, it's covered up by this illusory wealth that we're able to experience, of these temporary things that we can have. So we think that we've gotten richer, but when you look at people's actual financial standing, and it's not just a Western problem, it's across the world, everybody's getting poorer. How can that be? Well, if we want to find the true source of injustice in this world, the best place to start to look is debt-based money creation. If you want to see who's the man, who are the ones who are really oppressing the planet, look at who controls the central banks. Because it's that mechanism of debt-based money creation, creating ever more money, but also ever more debt that people are never able to pay back. That, if you want to find one single cause of the injustice and oppression in the world, that's it. And wokelings, you won't fix injustice by pursuing these symbolic crusades against whiteness or against Western civilization, all you are doing is generating hatred between groups. You're making it easier for the elite oligarchs in the big house to rule over the rest of us. Because, friend, we're all slaves.